Go ahead and get started. My name is Heather Williams, and I'm the Assistant Director of Leadership and Civic Engagement. I work with the Student Life team up under the Dean of Students office. So a little bit about what I do. I work with volunteerism and service hours, which is the part that I'm going to be talking about with you all today. I also oversee the Bird Feeder, which is our on-campus food pantry, and I work with our leadership development programs, so our annual leadership conference, and some other things that we do throughout the year. So that's just a little bit about me and why I'm here today. Look forward. Over the next 45 minutes, I'm going to try to do all the things on the slide and leave you some time for questions and answers. So to set the stage, the first thing I'm going to do is hopefully help connect the dots and a little bit about the why we're doing what we do. So we're going to start on the very high level, talking just briefly about the Momentum Year, a little bit about Dalton State Strategic Plan, the High Impact Practices Initiative, go over a few examples of how I have partnered with faculty this past year to implement some service learning projects in the classroom, and then we're going to do a demo of RoadrunnerServe so that way you have a better understanding of the platform and hopefully how that you can use it as an individual or as a tool in your classroom. So that's what I hope for us to cover today. If at any point you have any questions, feel free to pop in because I want to make sure that I address them and that you're really getting out of this what you would hope to get out of this today. So first off, hopefully we've all heard about the Momentum Year up to this point. I am not the expert on the Momentum Year, but I am going to do like a very quick highlight to help us again connect the dots. So the University System of Georgia, they've put together these 3 items that they say by doing these 3 things that we will achieve the Momentum Year. So with that, they want to make sure that students are making purposeful choices that focus on a specific area of program. They want to make sure that we're producing a productive academic mindset and that we're following clearly sequenced programs through the program map. And so it outlines what a few of those things are. The reason that this is important to what we're trying to do with service learning, or one of the ways service learning is a tool with the Momentum Year, is that service learning offers students with an informative exposure to the subject field area. By sending students out into the community to work on skills-based volunteer projects, they're able to learn and develop and really try to understand, like, do they like the skills they're using? Do they like the field of work that they're in or that they're hoping to pursue? And so again, it just kind of provides exposure to that subject field. The next piece of the Momentum Year is kind of the academic mindset. And is what they're encouraging us to do is think of the academic mindset as a growth mindset. So making sure that students are embracing challenges, that they're seeing the effort, that their efforts are leading to a path of mastery is the terminology they use, that we're teaching them to persist in the face of setbacks. So it's what I think about when I think of persistence is that if they don't feel like they have setbacks, then going out to the community and working with underserved populations or helping those in need, that it will help them kind of visualize and see those. Learn from criticism and then find lessons and inspirations in the success of others. So I think all these things that, if using a growth mindset, can be done through service learning projects. And so again, helping students become resilient and face those setbacks either through their personal journey or through helping others. The next step of that is the Dalton State Strategic Plan, and I know that we're I know it wraps up in 2019, so we're getting pretty close. But part 3 of the strategic plan heavily focuses on community engagement and specifically service learning. So essentially the 3 parts that connect us to this is that student affairs and academic affairs need to work together to ensure that the service learning opportunities that we're providing are quality and really reaching that point of high impact practices, which we'll talk about briefly in just a moment. So it also says that 10% of faculty in each school will engage students in service learning and volunteerism. So I know many of you in here today may already be using service learning in your classroom, but those of you who are interested and want to learn more about it, I would be happy to have that conversation or connect you with the HIPS committee who is helping teach and prep faculty and staff to do these types of programs. So let's pop forward to that. So this past year, I went through the HIPS learning more about high impact practices and re-envisioning the alternative break programs which I work with. Some of you all I know were also in that cohort, but just as a brief summary of how service learning and community-based learning is high impact, the most important is the direct experience. So a lot of times in our classes, we're talking to students about social issues or the impact of those social issues, but putting students in those shoes and having them work directly with it is going to be more impactful and empowering with their learning. So the next step to that is making sure that in whatever service they engage in, that it's skill-based off of their curriculum that you're teaching in your course. So make sure whatever projects they choose are actually encouraging them to use the skills, theories, ideology that you are teaching in your classroom, and then encouraging a classroom reflection. And so that could be a whole other presentation, so we're not getting into that today, but make sure that you're having them thoughtfully think about the service that they're doing and how it connects and applies to the curriculum that you're teaching. And then kind of just the plus to that is by working in the community, I truly believe that we're preparing them to be better citizens and to be better prepared for the workforce and life in general. So that's just kind of an extra little plus in that. So any questions off of those first kind of three components? So momentum meter, high impact practices, your strategic plan. Again, I'm not the expert, but I can do my best. All right. So the other thing that I want to share, and if you have examples, I would love to hear them as well. So RoadrunnerServe is our volunteer management platform. We launched it in September 1 of 2017, so it's not even a year old on campus yet, so it's very new. So with that, starting next week, we're doing a lot more marketing on campus to students, faculty, and staff that it's available. So today I'm talking about it through the lens of students, and students can do this, but know that if you're a faculty member and you need to track your hours, that you can also keep track of those in the system as well. So we'll come back to that in a minute. So last fall when we first launched, Kelly Mahoney had reached out to me, and one of the projects that she was doing with her class is that she asked them to do, I think it was 8 hours of volunteer service in the community, and then come back and write a paper based off that experience. Because again, she teaches first year students in literature, so in English composition, so she wanted them to go experience something and be able to write about it. So my involvement with that process and in this example is that I went into her classroom, I gave a presentation on how to use RoadrunnerServe, because again, with it being new, most of our students, A, do not know it exists, and B, have no idea how to use it. So it's very important that I'm able to get in front of your students to teach them how to use this, or connecting them with a webinar or online module that they can do for homework or outside of the classroom. So either of those are options for your classes as well if you want to schedule a time with me to do that. Once I presented to her class, she had them reach out to one of the various community partners in the system, which I'll show you in the demo, and it was up to them to choose who they wanted to do the project with. So she did not say, everybody in my class needs to volunteer for this one organization. She said, pick something that you're passionate about or that you want to learn more about, volunteer there, write the paper, and then we'll talk about it. So with her class, I was also able to, we can create groups within the platform. So if you tell me your course number and send me a list of your students, name, email address, and 9,000 numbers, I can collect them in a group so that way I can pull a report and give it to you at the end of the class, and you can have a list of all of your students and how many hours that they completed. So that way, if you need it for assessment purposes or verification purposes, I can make that available to you. So my involvement with her class was very minimal, as in presenting and helping verify hours, which we'll come back to later. The one project that I'm really excited about is working with the Wright School of Business. So I know Dr. Helms is in the room back there. She said, oh no, you pointed me out. But over the past couple months, I've been working with her to create some skill-based volunteer opportunities for approximately 80 students in the School of Business who are going into their upper level classes. And so she wanted to make sure that they were all volunteering with the same organization and getting similar experiences, because it's a very intensive part of their program this year. So Dr. Helms and I went and met with the Boys and Girls Club about a month and a half, 2 months ago. We sat down with their staff and identified 4 different different functional areas that their students could volunteer in based off of the majors within the School of Business. So with that, we were able to set up those opportunities in RoadrunnerServe where only the School of Business students in that class can see them, because the projects we're asking them to do are a little bit more high intense and not what we would want some random student to show up and be expected to do, because they're being prepped and trained to do these projects. So now whenever her students log in next week, they'll be able to see those private needs, which I'll show you in the demo. And so that way she can track them as a group. And so that's one of the things we're working on. Next week, I will go and present to her class, teach them how to use the system. The community partners we're working with will also come in and do a presentation on the projects and let them meet the staff. Hopefully, we're waiting on that to be confirmed. And then the students will have the entire semester to do their volunteer hours, have them approved, and complete their assignments. So those are just two examples. Some of the benefits over the past year that we've either noticed through trends or that faculty members have shared with us that we've worked with. The first one is that it helps students more easily discover and connect with community partners and needs in the community. So a lot of times we have faculty members coming to our office saying, or not faculty, we have students coming to our office saying, hey, my faculty member has said that I need to do 10 community service hours this semester. And we get a couple of different buts that come along with that. But I don't have transportation, but I don't know where I'm going to volunteer at, or other excuses. They keep giving us things of, oh, I didn't know that I could go to the Boys and Girls Club and volunteer for 10 hours. So with this, they can log into the platform, and under the needs section of it, it'll list all of the needs that community partners would say, we need somebody to come do this 10 days ago, so if you want to come and help us, you can do all 10 hours today, or you can spread it out over time. So it kind of more easily opens the door for them to search and see what else out there without the intimidation of that face-to-face just showing up at random community partners saying that I need to do something. So it's kind of easing them into that transition until they get more comfortable. I'm going to kind of combine and talk about number 2 and 4 together. So especially with service learning and volunteerism being a strong part of Dalton State's strategic plan, one of the things that I very quickly discovered, my first week on the job last summer, I went and met with all the deans of the different faculties in the schools, and very, very quickly learned that every school tracks volunteer hours differently. There was no consistency across campus, which meant that when it was time to create those end-of-year reports or do our annual assessments, that all of our numbers and the style of reporting looked very, very different. So the goal is over the next couple of years to have a more consistent tracking method so that over time we can better share our story as a campus and the impact that we're making on the community. So how many hours are Dalton State students, faculty, and staff contributing to volunteerism, but more importantly, what has that impact looked like for the community partners we've worked with? So we're really trying to, again, more consistently track those hours. And the third part, which this is faculty members' favorite, is that it simplifies hour verification. And so I'll show you kind of what that looks like in the demo. But with that, previously is what I've heard a lot of faculty have been doing is that students go volunteer, they have their volunteer coordinator sign a log saying that they had completed X number of hours. Some really sneaky students try to forge their hours or sign on behalf of someone else's account. Usually they get caught. But this really has a two-step verification with it. So first, students have to log in and tell us that they've done their volunteer hours, but then either one of two things happen. The first and most common is that whatever community agency they volunteered with goes in and approves those hours automatically. Because if they log in and volunteer with the Boys and Girls Club, say that they've worked 2 hours, the Boys and Girls Club automatically gets an email saying student A has noted that they volunteered for 2 hours, can you confirm this? They check yes, and then it's approved on their volunteer transcript, which I'll show you in a minute. The other option is a student calls and says, hey, I submitted these hours, but they haven't been approved, can you verify them? And then typically me or one of my trained student staff members are calling the Boys and Girls Club and saying hey, Sally has a paper due, she said that she volunteered 2 hours on this date at this time, can you verbally confirm this and I'll approve it in the system? And so as long as we have some sort of verbal confirmation, we'll approve that for them. So that way, by the time it gets to you as the faculty member, it's already approved and verified, so it kind of eases that additional step for you. So any questions on those examples or some of the benefits before I dive into the demo, because that's where we'll spend most of our time, I think. Okay. So let me go to actually all the states. Alright, so I'm going to start here and let you know a couple of ways that you can get to RoadrunnerServe. So first of all, on the handout I gave you on the side that says learn more at the bottom, getting started, it talks about logging into your account and also has the URL for that. So that's a really helpful resource. And if I come to your class to do a class presentation, each of your students will get this before they leave, and we'll also be giving these out at the involvement fair next week for any student who stops by and just wants to know more. So you can use the direct link.
Heather.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
We missed the handout.
Oh, I will grab a few more.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. Does anyone else need a handout? Get a few more. I don't think I replenished them after the last session, so I apologize. Perfect. Anyone else need a handout? We're good? All right. So you can always use the direct link that's on the bottom of the handout. You can also, if you go to Campus Live and other student resources, it's linked down here at the bottom under Get Plugged In. The other option is that tomorrow at Campus Assembly, you'll hear more about a new app that is going to be available to students, faculty, and staff. And in the app, one of the first options that you can click is Volunteer, and that will automatically redirect students on their mobile device to RoadrunnerServe. And so you all will hear more about that tomorrow. And then also within the next week or two, if they go to the Student Life page, there will be a direct link there, but right now there is not. So as soon as we get some website updates completed, you'll be able to find it from the Student Life page. So once you get to RoadrunnerServe, you will want to log in. A lot of things on the site you can do without logging in, but especially if your students are trying to respond or track hours, I recommend logging in. We have pre-created accounts for all students, faculty, and staff on campus because we can preload you using Banner. So with this, if you have not logged in before and do not know your password, unfortunately we are not yet on a single sign-on option, so your password does not match up. When we first launch the platform, or as we get new faculty, students, or staff, we upload them. At that time, you should get an email with login information. At this point, if you haven't seen it, the easiest way I would recommend is if you select Forgot Password, insert your Dalton State email address, and it'll send a notification to your Dalton State email for you to reset that password. And you can set it to be whatever you would like it to be. Once that's reset, your email address will be your user login. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. I'm going to start the demo on our sample site, so we're logging into Rage the Roadrunners account. And then, depending on questions you may have, I may log into my staff account to show you some of the behind-the-scenes things. So from here, the very first time that you or your students log in, it'll pop up a profile page where you'll need to update some information. After you've updated that information and submitted it, you won't have to see that page again until you decide to go and update your information. From then on out, you should automatically be redirected to this dashboard. So I'll talk you through this. On the dashboard, you will see it's also referred to as your volunteer snapshot. So whenever you log in, the volunteer hours that are showing are any pending or approved hours. If for any reason a student has been denied volunteer hours because their verification didn't check out, or they accidentally inserted the same volunteer experience twice, we're not going to give them double credit, they won't show up there. So these are just all the things currently pending or approved. The impact value number is based off of the national rate of volunteer efforts in our state, and so I think Georgia right now is $24 and change is the monetary value of volunteer service, and so the algorithm and back of it calculates that number and calculates it for them very nicely. We recommend students use this on their resume or when writing papers or things like that, or just as a fun fact. The bottom three squares, the need responses, agencies, FAN, and events, RSVP, of just keep them in touch with what they've responded to or what agencies they want to be a part of, because if they're volunteering with the Humane Society on a weekly basis, they can just spam them and automatically get email updates on when new needs are posted or when new events are coming up, things like that. So by banning agencies, it allows them to get constant updates. We'll come back to the volunteer resume in a little while, because that's, in my opinion, one of the most important things for faculty to know about, and so I'll wait and talk about that in just a couple of minutes. Especially for those of you who have not used the platform, or for your students who are incoming and have never logged in before, this new to RoadrunnerServe link is available even without logging in. So whenever they first pull up the site, they can see this before they log in. And it is full of, so it tells them how to set up their account. It has lots of tutorials on how they can use different parts of the system. So if I come, give you a classroom presentation, your students are still confused, they can come meet with me, or you can direct them here, and this will answer some of their questions for them. The next tab on this left-hand side that I want us to look at are volunteer leads. So this is the most popular portion of the portal, because this is where all of our community partners post things that they need to happen or need volunteers for. And on this page, the automatic setting is whatever was last updated will be at the top. So if students are looking for specific agencies or specific things, they can select a filter based off of what they're looking for. So here, I know that you'll see this one has a green box around it. So as students respond to needs, it'll turn green, letting them know that they've already registered for that event. For these other ones that say view details, you can click inside of them to learn more about what they're needing. So here, Habitat for Humanity, if your students need to get started doing volunteer hours on day 1, they are currently relocating, and so over the next 2 months, they need as many volunteers as they can get, because everything in the warehouse has to move to a different warehouse. So they are looking for lots and lots of volunteers. Each of them will also have additional details. So as community partners are putting these into the system, it'll ask them some questions and then put this information here. So for this project, they have to be 18 or older, so unfortunately some of our dual enrollment students will not qualify for this. And they'll say that it's not outdoors, but it is physical labor. There will also be a note here that if the facility they're working at is not accessible, it will note that here, because we want to make sure that if students are signing up to volunteer, that when they show up, they can actually engage in those volunteer efforts. So unfortunately, some of our community partners have facilities that aren't conducive to wheelchairs or other accommodation needs. So just make sure that they're checking those or connecting with a community partner before they drive out to a service site. When a student decides that they're, and I'm going to pop back out for a minute before I show you this next part. So here, again, you can search by agencies. Some of these opportunities will say up and have like a number up in the right-hand corner. That means that we're still looking for 35 volunteers to help with move-in day. That number automatically changes as people register. So if for some reason students want to volunteer for this, if it ever gets down to 0, it'll disappear from the page, so they don't even know it's an option. If someone unregisters, it will pop back up as an option again. So the system automatically tracks those things for us. Whenever you're, I'm going to put this off onto this for a minute. So here, typically this blue button, and I'm choosing to use this one because I am the agency that's going to get the spam email from clicking this button multiple times today. So here, if they read this and decide that yes, this is the volunteer opportunity that I want to participate in, typically this would say respond. So here we're going to manage responses since I've already done this once today. We can say, oh, instead of just volunteering for the morning shift, I also want to volunteer for the evening shift. It'll ask them to put in, if they're a user group, so if here for the School of Business, this is not one of theirs, but say that for their class, if they need credit for that in their class, once you send me the list of your students that we talked about earlier, so their email addresses, 9,000 numbers, and names, we can create a group for you. So they would select that this is part of the 2019 school or fiscal year 19 School of Business group. They would select that they're doing this project for class credit, and they would submit the response. So that way, when we pull that report for you as a faculty member at the end of the semester, that it'll have all of their hours included in that. So it's very important that they check that. It'll automatically send them an email reminders, or it'll send them an email confirmation saying, hey, Rach, you have just volunteered to help with move-in. And then 24 hours before the event, it sends them another email saying, hey, Rach, this is a reminder that in 24 hours, we expect you to help with this. And it has a link for them to unregister if for some reason plans changed and they can't make it. So that way the community partner's not sitting there waiting on them to show up. So there's ways for students to initially respond and then change if for some reason they can't make it that day. The other thing that I wanted to show you, and I'll pop back out, is that on the needs page, so for the example that I gave you with the School of Business, so if we're looking for user group, and here students can only select groups they're a member of, so right now Rage is a member of the School of Business. So if he clicks here and searches, it will only show them the opportunities that are private for the School of Business. So again, the School of Business wanted to set up a special project that only their students can participate in for this class credit. So if you have a similar scenario in your coursework, we can do the same thing for you. So that way, if you tell your students that you only want them volunteering at one of these 3 sites, I can help you set it up to where they can search for that and only volunteer in those 3 areas for your approved credit. So we have a couple options there. The other tabs on this left-hand side are just kind of need-to-know information for students. So sometimes we get students who come in and say, like, week to week, I can't commit to volunteering to get my 10 hours, but we don't have classes over fall break and I can take time off. What can I do? And so in that case, I would recommend them look at our alternative breaks program. So if you pull it up, we run breaks over fall break, spring break, and then MLK weekend right now. So if they attend these trips, they'll get a high number of service hours in a short period of time. So I'm trying to remember the breakdown that we had, and I don't think it's on this page. Yes, it is. So for weekend trips, the way that they're structured, students will get at least 14 hours of service in those extended weekends. And for our week-long trip for spring break, they'll get a minimum of 30 service hours. So especially for those students who are looking to apply to potentially the social work program who requires a high number of volunteer hours, things like that, if they can't commit to that over time, these are short impact time periods that they can volunteer and do those. For these breaks, there are costs associated with that for meals and travel. So just know that that would kind of be the stand-back thing for some of our students. But that is an option. And we also have, under our Civic Learning and Democratic Engagement tab, lots of different resources for students. These are still being updated right now, so they're not in full functioning mode, but if they click in here, they can learn more about how to register to vote, Constitution Day, or some of the other programs we have going on. So with that, I'm going to pop back to our dashboard. So next, so at this point, if we're talking to a student through their experience, we've done a classroom presentation or teach them how to use the system. You've given them their assignment, they went out and volunteered, and now they're ready to track their hours. So the next step with that is that at the top of each student's bar, they should see this add hours option. So you as a faculty member, if you're tracking your hours, you should also see this up at the top if you wanted to keep track of those for any reason. So if you click add hours, it'll automatically bring you to this page. If they responded to a need in the site, the first answer should be yes, and they'll be able to choose what they volunteered for. So here, Rage volunteered for move-in day, and he volunteered today for 2 hours, and it was part of a classroom assignment. The next step are these 2 questions. We just kind of ask because we're wanting to get student trends and information over time. So if you want the answers to these questions from the students in your course, I can pull them. Unfortunately, we can't modify these questions to fit every faculty member's needs. So these are just generic questions we ask every student, and we've tried to leave them very vague. So the first one is like, what skills have you used at your community site, and did you learn a new skill or clarify an interest? The second is, what learning occurred for you in this experience, and how can you apply this learning? Because we're just trying to gauge it. Very broad, but applicable to every major. So for now, I'm just going to write test in these. And we are going to submit our hour entry. So now up top, you will see that there's a couple different things going on here. So anything in yellow for the student means that it has not yet been verified. So for these, I have not logged in and approved Rage's hours yet. So once they're approved, those will turn into green. Up until the point they're approved, if students need to modify or change those hours, they can click the little pencil to the side and edit those. So they can make changes up until the time they're approved. Once they're approved, they'll just have to make a new submission or contact someone in our office to help them navigate that. So let me pop over. If we go back to the dashboard, now that we have some examples in there, we're going to pull the volunteer resume. My favorite part about this feature is that you can choose a date range. So if students are in your class and you're requiring them to do 10 hours of service within that fall semester, they can pull, or even within a 2-week time frame, whatever your time frame is, we can say classes begin on August 9th in 2017 and end on 2018. So we're just going to leave it at a year from now. But they could pull it based off of whatever time frame you provide in the assignment. Whenever they pull it, the first page is not as important for me, except for at the top it will tell you what time frame they pulled it from. So if you gave them a very specific time frame, you can verify what that time frame is in the top right-hand corner. The first page is just their personal dashboard. As a faculty member, you may not care about this page very much. The second page is what I consider to be the more important part. So here, students can download this at any time and either upload it into your online classroom portal or print it out and give you a hard copy with their assignment, whatever you gave them. So you'll notice that if we look at the August 9th, 2018, so Rage volunteered for Move-In Day. It said he worked for 23 hours. I highly don't believe that, but it's there. So anyway, so he worked for 23 hours. Those hours have been approved, and so that's green, and it has a green check mark. You'll notice the one on the very bottom, October 11th, 2017, says greenhouse, and it also has a check mark on the right. Both of those have been verified hours, so anything with a green check mark is verified. The only difference in reading this is that you'll notice under the greenhouse it says individual. That just means that the greenhouse did not have an agency site set up in the system, and so, but he still volunteered there, and they can tell us, they can give us a contact name and number to call and verify. So we were able to call and verify that he did work with the greenhouse, and so those 4 hours are confirmed. The green bar at the top just means that he worked with Student Life, and that we are the ones who logged in and approved that through the system because he responded to a need in the portal. So both of those are approved. Anything in yellow means that it is pending. So they've reported doing these hours, but they have not yet been approved yet. So if a student turns this in and they have yellow hours, I would not necessarily count them out yet. I would maybe call my office or send the student to me to call and make sure they're verified. Sometimes we try to approve them and verify them on a very, very consistent basis, but sometimes our community partners are way down in the weeds with what they're doing, and they just didn't quite get to that verification process, so I can log in and do that for them after I have verbal confirmation. So those are all in there for you, but the green ones are verified. So any questions on this volunteer transcript? Good. It's pretty user-friendly and pretty easy to read. So in the example, and I'll show you what this looks like for students as well. So in the example, when Rage was at the greenhouse, he did not respond to a need in the system. So the only thing that changes is that instead of us selecting a group, he'll put the individual details. So he'll let us know where he volunteered, who can verify the hours, and then what email address that we can use to confirm that information. I typically coach students that in the description section to also leave a phone number, because sometimes people just don't respond to emails and don't read emails. Typically, our community partners are better than our students, but we still struggle with it sometimes. So picking up a phone is often way easier than waiting for them to respond to an email. So we try to coach them to put a phone number in the description side. So does anyone have any questions about RoadrunnerServe platform, the connection to the different pieces on campus, or questions about how you can use this in your classroom? Yeah.
One of the questions I've got is, we teach, for instance, the LPNs. So they'll come in, and there may be a year to 6 months that they will wait before they come back to the RN program, and then between the RN and the BSN program, there could be 6 months to a couple of years. How long does this stay on the site so that they can keep building this resume as they go through programs like this?
Definitely. As long as they have their Dalton State email account, they can check it.
Awesome.
So if they're like taking a year off and coming back, they can still pull it up. We are not going to go in and delete out these profiles for them. I know at some point students who graduate, their email address is no longer live. So I don't know what that cutoff is, but as long as they are still enrolled, this is the plan. They can access it. So yeah, easy fix. Yes?
I thought of a question. What about the questions that the students have to answer about their participation? Can you make those mandatory, that they have to fill those out?
So the way the system is set up is that they cannot submit their form until they fill in those text boxes. So it'll be, especially if you as a faculty member want to know the answers to those questions, is coaching them and doing it thoroughly and not putting NA in the box when they submit it. Because it doesn't check for quality, it checks for inserted information in the text box.
We've gathered that on pen and paper in the past. We've got a lot of faculty who are writing teaching articles about service learning, so we'd like to keep some of that longitudinal data. So
Yeah. And
we'll
so
force them to do
we'll
that.
definitely keep it tracked in the system. The other thing that we don't really have control of, but that we are starting this fall, is that 48 hours after a student has volunteered, they'll automatically be sent a link to a survey to give us some more in-depth information. And our plan is that at the end of the year, like as we collect that, is we'll share it out with campus and our community partners to kind of let them know how our students' experiences have been and if they've had any like feedback. So we will share that information as well, but we just don't have a great way to force students to take the survey. So yeah.
Can you force them to just use one of the agency partners? Does that make sense? All right, so what would stop me from just saying I volunteered at the Red House and just put in my girlfriend's email address for you to follow up, and she goes, yeah, he did.
Because we validate with them, so if they give us a sparklyshoes@yahoo.com email address, like clearly that's not our community partner and we're not going to validate that. Also, like in some circumstances, like if we're calling them and they answer the phone, you can pretty well gauge, like, is this a valid thing or not? So is there some student in the world that's going to find some tricky way to manipulate the system? Like there's a very small chance, but we've tried to make it to where those chances are as small as possible. You could, as a faculty member in your assignment, tell them that they have to use a verified partner in here, and that
They
way.
could still do something, they would have to, they could do it. Oh, I didn't see that, right?
So yeah, so you could potentially like say that when you pull their volunteer resume, so if they turn this in, let me see if I can pull it up. So you can also tell them that if it's not from an approved agency in the system, that it's not going to count.
Right.
And so when they turn this in for credit and 4 of their hours are not from one of those approved sites, you can just say, these 4 hours don't count. I need you to do 4 more, or I need you to do further verification. So that could be a decision that you make as a faculty member.
Is Northwest Georgia Main site in there?
Yes, they are. The other option is that, to kind of help alleviate that, is that as a faculty member, if you know a community partner or agency that you want to work with or who have been working with and they are not in the site, let me know and I will call and connect with them and do my best to get them in the platform. Because right now recruitment has been me calling out or meeting with various community partners and adding them as we go. So if you know one specific, I'll make sure to try to get them in here as quickly as possible. So. Other questions? couple more minutes, but I will say that if you all want me to come present in your classrooms to your students about this, if you'll shoot me an email sooner rather than later. The first week of classes for our office is super packed because we're working tons of different events and programs on campus. But starting on the second week of classes, I can very easily get into your classroom. And so I've been scheduling those on kind of a first come, first served basis. So if you'll email me with your class time and dates, I will get you in on the first available time slot for that. And I can adjust presentation times depending on what you need. I can give a very general overview fairly quickly. If you want me to teach students how to log in and use their accounts, it will take closer to 30 minutes to get through that in an adequate amount of time. And I know that whenever I worked with Kelly back in the fall, that we held her class at a computer lab so that we could actually get students logged in and checked in, and so that took closer to the 45-minute range because we were having to wait and make sure everyone was in the right spot and caught up and everything. So a couple of different options. But if you don't have any, or let me tell you a little bit about this really quickly because I said I would come back to it. The backside of the achievement badges is a new program for this fall. And so what this does is as students reach these different thresholds, it automatically adds a badge to their volunteer transcript, letting them know that they have volunteered for that number of hours, just as kind of a little incentive to them. Each milestone that they reach, they'll get a different incentive for the first 3 pieces. This summer, we were also approved to be an approving organization for the Presidential Service Award. And that award is through the U.S. White House and the current president in office. And so students who reach that threshold, we'll provide them with the application. And then they'll get a letter from the sitting president at the time. So whoever's in office, they'll get a letter from them, as well as either a medallion or pin based off of their choice. So just for those students who are reaching that high number of hours each academic year, we want to make sure that they're incentivized, and that's just a special program in a small way that we can thank them with that. And so any student reaching these thresholds will be invited to our kind of volunteer appreciation event at the end of each spring. So that's just a new program. But otherwise, make sure that you've signed in before you head out, because I've been told that if I don't get that sign-in sheet back by the end of today, that lots of faculty members are going to be mad at me tomorrow. So make sure that you get that signed in, but otherwise enjoy your afternoon, and I hope that I can come to some of your classrooms and do great volunteer programs. So have a great day.